Have you got me? I think I'm doing something here because I can't
that was
hear
me.
you.
That was me. Rookie
Oh,
mistake. I did the mute thing. Oh man, rookie mistake. How you doing today, Tony?
I'm good, and how are you?
I'm doing great. Hey, if you're ready, let's just jump right into it. I know I don't know if you did some homework on me. My style is more conversational instead of just
cool.
question.
Yeah. That suits fine.
Okay, well, all the way from Dublin, Ireland, my man Tony Tyrrell. Thank you for just joining the podcast for a second, just to talk about the new album, Conviction. This was fun. I really like the reason I say this is fun. I felt I learned more about you through the album than I did coming up with questions about said album. Man, this was
just from listening.
Let's just get into it, man. Okay, Conviction. It's your debut album. Those who are listening or watching here on YouTube, this album, the name Tony Tyrrell may sound familiar because you were one of the founding members of the Afternoons in the mid '90s. I'm showing my age a little bit, so yeah, I do those cuts. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, during this album, you have opened the door to everything that has ever happened to you. You examined it, put a good beat to it, and here we are.
Well,
I know, but how that assessment is that correct?
I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, like some of these songs were written over a long period of time. So yeah, they're kind of probably reflecting maybe things that happened to me. Definitely, in some cases, there's a bit of autobiography going on, and then also maybe just the way I think, about things more generally, and just putting it down in a song. So I kind of. It's a very interesting observation that you said, to learn more from listening to the album. That's a good thing, I think, because it's meant to be a sort of a personal communication,
you nailed that one.
Yeah, because I really don't see the point in any other form of communication, to be perfectly honest. So it's not a kind of it's not a flashy record. It's not intended to be, and has a bit of a retro thing going on in it in terms of its feel. Because I wanted to kind of bring the attention back on the songs rather than just the sound, because some music is more sound than songs. More of a beat or whatever. You don't really care what they're saying. So I kind of wanted people to care about what I was saying. So I kind of pulled it back a bit. It's quite stripped back. There's 4 other musicians on it. There's very little kind of studio trickery, so we're really trying to focus in on the songs, and pulled it back as well. It's kind of more or less recorded live. We did it over 3 days. I hadn't met the guys before, but we kind of did homework and so on, and sat down. I had very strong ideas about how things might sound, and worked with an extremely good producer. And these were very good musicians. So we kind of sat down, and really what I wanted to do was to make a sort of a live is probably the wrong word, but you know what I mean, something that is alive, that we're actually doing that in the studio, and it's not somebody twiddling buttons afterwards. So it's actually people playing instruments, trying to communicate with each other, and then me trying to communicate through the songs. But yeah, there's a degree of autobiography, but certainly a lot of I think the way I think is probably betrayed in those songs. Yeah, even if I didn't intend that. But that's what you do when you put a record out. It's out there, and people can tear it apart and kind of interpret and think whatever they might in whatever way they see fit. So but yeah, that's a long-winded answer to your question. But yeah, it's
all good. I could be long-winded myself. Like with this, I gotta say, like how you say your music is, there is a touch. Here's how I take it: like folk rock with a little touch of adult contemporary.
Yeah.
because that live aspect of folk rock, you're doing it right there. The instruments are played right there. You're a singer-songwriter. You're essentially emoting all of your
Yeah.
feelings, and it's coming out in this beautiful movie. And this lets me know that, like my next question, I guess, if you call it a question, like, let's just jump right into it. Like, I was going to talk a little bit about your upbringing, a little bit about the afternoons. That was great. But when the band dissolved, right?
Mm.
I need to, you had a lot of great moments with that. Why now for an album? Like,
Yeah.
normally when a band dissolves, everyone goes solo
Yeah.
immediately, just about immediately. But
Yeah.
now we are, for lack of a better term, 20 years
Yeah. 20 years. Yeah.
away from the dissolution of the afternoons.
Yeah.
And now you decide to go,
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
now?
Well, I think, the band was kind of, they were band members, but they were kind of very good friends, so there was a sort of a family feel to the band. And so the breakup of the band, I think a lot of bands are like this, but, this one kind of hurt a lot, you know what I mean? It takes a while to get over it. This your life is knitted up with this and the people involved, for in all sorts of ways, kind of there's all ripple effects throughout your life when things like this break up. And not that it was altogether acrimonious, but there's a degree of that. But people then go separate ways, and I didn't play guitar, so I co-wrote songs with one of the guys in the band. I played sax and clarinet, and wrote the songs as in melody and lyric. But I worked with a guitarist, so he was doing the chorded stuff, underneath that. So, for a while I just switched off. I wasn't really doing anything, And then I thought, hey, like, I actually, I went, this may sound odd, but as part of my sort of day job, I went to a coach, these sort of life coach people. And I said, look, I'm just kind of, a bit pissed off here. There's like stuff isn't really working for me. It kind of felt very mundane. And I couldn't figure out what it was. I thought it was something to do with the work or whatever. But actually through a process working with her, after a couple of sessions, I realized that actually I was just missing music, and that I was missing writing songs. I mean, not that I wasn't listening to music, but missing writing songs. So I then took up the guitar to learn how to, do the chord stuff underneath the songs, and began to write again. And then I recorded, I did stuff with the ex-singer from the band, and I did a little bit of other stuff on my own. And I ended up in a studio with a guy, a fantastic piano player that I know. And we were putting some music together, and he was saying, look, you could have this vocal and this vocal. And none of the voices matched what I was hearing in my head, And it was then that I started to sing. Now, he was telling me it was a big mistake, because he said, look, you're not a singer. What are you doing? Don't be singing. But I was never singing really, largely because I always had a saxophone or a clarinet in my mouth. You know what I mean? So it wasn't that I couldn't sing, it's just that I wasn't singing. So, I kind of fell into, I did that, kind of that almost happened by accident. And then I kind of went, oh, hold on a second, this is interesting. I can actually push this on a little bit further myself. And so I did that. Then there was a sort of an economic collapse here and all over the world. I ended up living in America for 6 years. I'm based in Dublin in Ireland here, but I ended up in America in Washington, D.C. for 6 years for work-related reasons. So I got cut off again, from the stuff I was doing. Right. Did some stuff while I was in America, met some people. We used to have these sort of what we call kitchen sessions in our house, where people would come around and play and sing, and, met an awful lot of very talented people, did a couple of songwriting workshops with a folk singer called Dara Williams. I don't know whether you know her. So I was keeping in touch, and it was still there, but I wasn't really in it. So then I came home, and then I was busy coming home and, doing all this sort of stuff that goes on with getting back here and kids and all the rest of it. And then COVID happened. And then I was sitting there going, hold it a second, if this is actually, this is possibly our lives forever, I need to get my ass moving here and do something with this music. I did an awful lot of songs written. I still have lots and lots of songs I've never recorded. And so I started actually messing around with desktop recording stuff for the first time, and then kind of orchestrating songs and kind of thinking, okay, how would this sound and how would this sound and what's the shape of the song? And that's what kind of that triggered me into kind of going, okay, each little step just brought me the next step. And then I had a whole bunch of stuff and I went, oh yeah, maybe this is what I should be doing, actually recording it. So reached out to the producer, a guy called Tommy McLaughlin. He lives up in the northwest of the country here. And he's worked with people that I like and that I admire, bands that operate around this part of the world. And I approached him, asked him, would he be interested, send him some tunes. We started talking and he said, yeah, let's do it. And so emerging out of the lockdown then last year, I think September was the first time I went up just to meet him and kind of went through, stuff live with him. And then I think October we brought in the band and we did the thing then, and then there's all the process. There's more lockdown and other things get in the way. So the album was only just recently come out, but that's not unusual for records, So that's the story. Yeah.
Now here's something that I thought was interesting because you kind of touched on it a little bit. Was it hard going from the person who played instruments to the singer? Mainly because it's sort of like, yes, you play clarinet, you play saxophone, and could you always sing, or was it just kind of like you were never asked?
Yeah, I could always sing. It's kind of, I mean, I've no experience of like being the singer, but I could sing. A lot of people can sing. It's a question of whether you can sing well then, and kind of project it and so on. But the one thing I'd say to you is that the mechanics of singing, the sort of diaphragm and breath control and all that sort of stuff, I had all of that because of the wind instruments, so right. That sort of aspect of it was absolutely, that was fine. There was no problem then. But actually the issue was more, like I could be sitting in this room and here, kind of, messing around with a guitar or actually often just singing in my head. So there's a different thing to do with singing out. And when I was talking to the producer, he said, look, you really do need to just actually start singing out. Because, this was lockdown, so there's no opportunities to be singing anywhere, So then I just started singing out. And the internet is an amazing thing. I found free online lessons. I just did them every day, still do. Sort of like 20 minutes here and 20 minutes there. And but do them every day. They're simple, but you repeat them and it just strengthens muscles, and that's what it does, your control, like anything, so it just kept repeating this, and I'm working on the song. So the hardest thing actually was going into the studio then, working with professional musicians as me, the singer. That was weird, because these guys have been doing this for their whole lives and they're brilliant. And then I walk in and it's my first time doing this as the singer. And, that was a little bit daunting. But the guys were fantastic. They really were. I wrote somewhere, I think I was asked to do some post about writing a song, recording and so on. And, my reflection on that was that I think some of the best musicians are probably the most humble people, because they just don't have any ego. They don't need to have, they're just brilliant, so they don't need to show off, and they don't need to kind of make anybody feel bad, or, they just are like, brilliantly professional. And being professional also means making the people they're working with feel comfortable. And that's what, those guys did that I worked with. They were really, really fantastic,
Oh, that shows. Well, let's just jump into it. Let's talk about Conviction. I kind of been tiptoeing and hinting around it.
Yeah.
This thing it's a great album, very emotional. And let's start with the single, Mockingbird.
Yeah.
Who did it? I am convinced this is a real story. This actually happened. there was a person who did it.
Well, it's
real. I am convinced that's a real story. Just put the music. Am I even right in that?
You are absolutely right in that. It's a real story. It's not, not a literal story, but it's a real story. It's more about, again, it's about, if a close non-romantic friendship that broke up and had all sorts of, when you lose a good friend, it's not a nice thing. So that's kind of what it is, and it's probably my reaction to that, to that feeling, or my processing of that feeling to some extent. And the mockingbird idea is really, when you're in the middle of something like that, and things are breaking up, if you like, between two people, and even after that happens, you're kind of conscious that you might take some sort of principled stand or whatever it is, but even while you're doing that, and even while you think that that's the right thing to do, you're also going to hurt yourself. And so the mockingbird is almost standing at the side like a Greek chorus saying, hey, this is tragic. this is everybody gets hurt. And I think that's really what that song is about. Everybody gets hurt. And, in a situation like that. So it's kind of, yeah, I like that song, and people tend to like that song because I think for the reason you're saying that, I think you can intuit that it's real. It's there's a strong intent in it, and that is kind of, to me, it's quite a sinuous, strong sort of song, and also it doesn't have a happy ending. So it doesn't. Disney. Yeah, it's not Disney, and life is not Disney, and so it's so it's that sort of song. Now I don't think it's terribly hugely depressing, but it tells a story, and I think that's
obvious.
Yeah.
And like when I listened to, all right, so honestly, maybe that was a little self-serving because I just want to know if that was real or not with Mockingbird.
Yeah.
It's a great song. It's a single for a reason. You totally got my attention, and it entraps you because it makes you think about yourself. It makes you think about your circle, and then like a snap of a finger. No, that happened to him. And like, I want to investigate. I want to find out what more happened to Tony. But now this is one Shining that I was listening to where this is more of a existential view of you blaming yourself. And then you are having this inner fight in yourself. And towards the end, then that starts to have more of a happy ending. Okay, what's going on, Tony?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think I think you kind of captured it. It's more. I wrote that song literally. It just came out as it is. I was just messing around with a descending bass line type pattern, and then out came that song, and I wrote it. And when I wrote it, I thought that's a very peculiar song because I didn't actually. Often I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? I kind of, there's a. I know when I'm starting, like sometimes you just pick up a phrase and things happen, but other times, like Mockingbird, for example, I was writing about that, or there's other songs where I'm writing about a particular thing. But this one just came out like that, and I had no idea what it was. I couldn't actually interpret even for myself. I just, what the hell is that? I knew it was something to do with inaction. I knew it was something to do with hope. Or there's sort of a different shade, if you like, in it. But I think ultimately, if you were to kind of push me on it, I would say it is probably a conversation with myself, and it's partly. I mean, you just said it took me 20 years to make a solo album, so there's prevarication if ever there was prevarication. So I think it's kind of like partly that that I'm, I think I'm kind of I live a lot in my own head, so I think about stuff a lot.
Really?
So, but doing is a whole other thing. You know what I mean? So there's it's something about that. It's about, and I mean that can be anything from personal ambitions to political situations, or whatever it might be, that you observe things and you don't really do an awful lot about them. So I think it's kind of like, it's kind of me having this conversation with myself, saying, look, what are you at? Like, you're going, it's almost like, are you a hypocrite? You say this and you do that. But in the end, there always is a little chink of light, I think, and that's, if we don't have that chink of light, well, then I think we're in bad shape. So that's what that shining bit is, in
Right.
the title, and so it's a little chink of light. But I spoke to somebody else about that song, and they said, yeah, but it sounds to me like you're still letting yourself off the hook.
Yeah. That's what I think. It was just sort of like, since you're having a fight with yourself, you haven't let yourself off the hook. We're not done with this fight. We're just taking a pause. Yeah, I got that too.
Yeah. but I gotta make the album, so I think that I think I've kind of put my neck out there a bit, so I that's okay. Like, I'm cool with that, and I'll continue to kind of push a bit more.
And the last thing I would like to say, that even though this was essentially the first single, but it was the one that kind of, okay, I see what we're doing here. Now is another day. And with that made me feel, okay, at that time, I didn't do a deep dive and examine my man, Tony. I was just like, okay, I was a good, honestly, on the album, that is the most, as you call it, Disney-esque song. What was the motivation of putting that one first before we just jump into this sea of betrayal, heartbreak, life-altering situations? There's a reason that was the first single.
Yeah, Another Day is kind of like, it's, for me, it's kind of an interesting song as a writer, like, so the story behind that one is, I was stopped at a traffic light in my car. A car pulled up beside me, and there was a girl in the car who was upset. She was crying. And so I noticed that, number one. And then the second thing I noticed, that she had this little kind of a dangly giraffe from her rear view mirror. These things that people, some people have dice and some people have other things, but there's a little furry giraffe. And I thought, oh, that's peculiar also. And then we went our separate ways. But for some reason, the image of her being upset stayed in my mind, and I just thought I kind of had to write a song about her to get it. This is what happens to me when you write songs, and little things get in your head, and then they kind of snowball into other things. So I began to imagine a story about her, and that's what that was. The giraffe transformed into an angel, which kind of has a different sort of set of imagery associated with it. And it's about, the song is a very straight narrative in a way that I don't generally write. And so I kind of had to discipline, I wanted to do that. I just kind of said, okay, I want to do this type of a song. And I kind of had to rein myself in to do a sort of a descriptive song that brought you into the car with the girl, that you had that feeling like you were on a journey. So there's the physical journey, there's an emotional journey. So there's like specific things mentioned about, roadside cafes and, different things that you can actually picture along a route, if you like, So this may sound odd, but I was actually really proud of myself that I managed to do that, to keep it. It's not an easy thing to do, depending on what way you're disciplined in your mind. And there are people that I really, admire, anybody from the likes of Ron Sexsmith, for example, or Paul McCartney or Elvis Costello, these sort of people who write these wonderful story songs, and with, that are just kind of, you just kind of feel like you're with the person. And I think like a lot of songwriting in my head, at least, is about being empathetic. It's about kind of receiving messages and kind of from people and situations, and then kind of absorbing them, and kind of working with them a bit. They may even be messages from yourself, but about having some level of empathy. I think all art actually has levels of empathy. That's why we love it.
Right.
That's why we react to it. So yeah, that was that song. So she comes out okay the other end, I think, of that song. So that's kind of like, there's a happiness to it, although she's gone through some trouble. But we all do. Yeah.
While listening to this album, one of the things I can clearly see that you're clearly a student of the game. as you call it, sample. I don't want to say samples, like these little nuggets, these little
mm,
soundscapes
mm,
of, and you name names, I'm gonna name names. This is who I feel kind of like this is the tone influence of,
mm,
like your Leonard Cohen's,
mm.
maybe a lot of Neil Young,
Yeah,
Arcade Fire,
yeah.
little touch of Nick Cave because it gets dark
Mm.
quick, like quick.
Yeah.
But it shows you're a student of the game and you understand that.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious, when you go out in your downtime and you're not making music yourself, do you go out to shows and gigs as a fan?
Yeah.
Just check them out. If so, who do you like to see?
Yeah, well, I think all of them that you just mentioned. It's a very. I think I don't think I would hope it's not obvious. I don't like the idea of just kind of reproducing somebody, but
You're not.
yeah,
But what
but
I'm saying is
yeah,
those
the
elements of
sensibilities.
storytelling.
Yeah. I mean, for example, I've recently been to see Arcade Fire here. I absolutely loved it. There's some musicians, bands
Mm-mm.
manufactured, kind of. And then there's some music to me that kind of is like a force of nature. It just has to be. I think Arcade Fire is one of those bands. Radiohead is one of those bands. That they just kind of they just feel like there's an energy that drives them outside of somebody standing aside and kind of saying, I think we should do this. I think they just have to be, and that sort of thing is what really turns me on in music. That sort of, whether that be Beethoven, or Mozart, it just has to be. It's not, or John Coltrane. It's not. There's almost no decision in it. Like, these people just are music, and so that's the sort of thing I would love. On the other hand, I also love language. So when you pick out Leonard Cohen, for example, or Bob Dylan, Nick Cave, like people who clearly love language, because that's a huge part of their trade. There's also all of that. Actually, before COVID, I saw a double header with Dylan and Neil Young, in a sort of a football field here. And I before I left America, I'd seen in quick succession. I saw Dylan twice, and he was doing the crooner stuff. Now I've loved him for my whole life, so I listened to him doing anything. But I thought I was going to get more of the same when I went to this gig. But Neil Young came on and he was fantastic. He's, Willie Nelson's son's playing with him, and it's just fabulous, just the raw energy. And then Dylan came on and I thought, this is going to get a little bit down after Neil Young. But in fact, he sat down at the piano and the opening chords were from Ballad of a Thin Man, and the whole concert just went after that. In fact, the two of them come out, Neil Young came out on stage with him at one point. But these are the people that I love. You've named quite a few.
Yeah.
And then there's the Richard Thompson type here, that sort of stuff I absolutely love. And of course, all of the older, the Beatles and Van Morrison, and some of U2, some of the energy that they brought to music, because obviously they're from the same city as I am. But there's also a lot of singer-songwriter people around here, and bands that are just fabulous. A band called Villagers, for example, that the producer of the record had been a member of. They're still going, and they're superb. I've been to see them twice recently as well. So I like to go to a lot of gigs. I like to go to a lot of theater as well. I find theater does that thing to me. Like, I always come out with ideas, and again,
I'm starting to notice that.
Yeah.
Hey, you mentioned football earlier. You're still playing 5A football twice a week?
Yeah, that's right.
You do?
I do. So
all right. The reason I ask, this is good. This is like, may I ask why? Because sometimes it can get a little rough. Okay, soccer for my Americans here. Yeah, you play 5A. The reason I'm saying it gets a little rough. Yeah. And a bad play, you could damage a digit, you can mess up your hand, you can't play. God forbid you get into a scrum, you can't sing. But what is it? I'm serious. What is it about that makes you want to play?
Yeah. Well, I play twice a week now, right? I did, for example, when I was in the States, I busted my Achilles playing five-a-side, with a bunch of dads from my kids' school, and that wasn't very pleasant. But I play every week. I play a couple of times a week. I love it, right? And the reason I love it is that, my kind of day job is research stuff, and then I'm doing music. So I'm kind of, I'm reading stuff and sitting around and, doing all that sort of stuff. You get out there and there's a whole bunch of stuff about football that I love. One is that, you can get this group of people together who do whatever they do in their lives, and you put this thing in the middle of the pitch, and it becomes the only thing that matters for that hour, right? Nothing else matters. And everybody wants to win, but it doesn't matter whether you win or you don't win at the end, but while you're there, you want to win. And it's the kind of the level of engagement, like people turn into different people almost, when they're in this space, and then they return to themselves, when it's over. And then I really like the physical part of it. I just like the, it's almost, I don't see the point in kind of, I don't see the point of playing football if you're not playing football. Like you have to want to win, and you have to kind of go for it, regardless of your age and your ability. You just get stuck in. But it's also just a very different thing from everything else I do, and it's that's what I just really love it, and you just switch off. You're just in there doing this thing, and you come out and you're sore, you're sweating,
right.
You're broken.
I get it. Like you can give all yourself in your music, and then you can give all yourself on the field, and sometimes they could just match. And in this case, like I have not done that. I went the other way. While I'm waiting on American football to start. It starts later on this week, actually, and I've been watching a lot of the UEFA Championship. For whatever reason, I have adopted this team. I have adopted Chelsea. I know, don't hate me. It's I don't know. It's just man, I'm loving Fofana, Raheem Sterling. I'm loving. Okay. Let's go to Sterling. I love a person who got rejected from Man City and now is playing with this just tremendous chip on his shoulder. It's just all emotion with this guy. He got something to prove. It just makes it more fun to watch.
No, the standard. I mean, I think some of the stuff about football is extraordinary. I mean, you look at, particularly the Champions League stuff. I mean, the level of football, just what they're doing there in these tiny spaces, and how just their level of skill is just phenomenal. And that you can only kind of stand back and admire that. But I think the different thing also about modern footballers is that they're really skillful, but they're really, really committed too. You don't get a lot of people standing around the pitch. Even Ronaldo, for example, like Ronaldo will still chase a ball. He doesn't kind of give up and say, oh, I know I'm prima donna, I'm not really gonna, like, he gets stuck in, and he tries to do his thing. And that's what I really like about some of the things about modern football. I think there's probably too much money in it, and that spoils it a bit. But the actual level of commitment and skill is just phenomenal. It's so far beyond what it used to be.
I totally understand, mainly because the money is a byproduct of the athletes themselves. Because since we're so into it, everyone wants to pour a little bit more money, because in a weird way, everyone wants to pick their team. Everyone wants to give as much as their team. And that's why I said, don't hate me with Chelsea, because I mean, they're such, I won't call them front runners, but it is the popular thing, but it's the best story. It's the best, like it just is.
But they sacked their manager.
Exactly. And everyone shut up about it except Fofana. Come on. And
after
so he got
6 games.
he got heat from the team one way because he broke the rule, but at the same time, this is the same person who nurtured him and made him the player he is. And you expect him not to say anything? Come on. We're getting way off track. I know I've ate up a lot more time than what I should. Tony, man, you can go forever about this. Much success on the album Conviction. They can look you up on TonyTyrrellMusic.com, Tony Tyrrell Music on Instagram. Anything you got coming up, you can look at this camera, that camera. Come on, just all things Tony right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I actually today started doing a list for my next album. So, of kind of I'm grading the songs in terms of how ready or otherwise they are, because that's really the ambition, is to do the next one. In the meantime, I'm setting up some gigs here. I'm also then pushing for radio play, and hopefully over your side of the pond also as well. To try
I'm
and
sorry,
just
if
get
it's
some.
okay with you, can I play a couple of tunes on the podcast itself, the audio version?
Yeah, feel free. Yeah, feel
Okay,
free.
all right.
But thank you very much. But yeah, like to try and get some sort of name recognition, there. Begin to do gigs here, and then also look forward to the festival sort of season next year, both here and in Europe. And then hopefully at some stage get over to you guys, because I'd love to go over there and play, some smaller venues, and just kind of, it's a different type of audience and so on. No, but it would be just really nice thing to do. And having lived there as well, it'd be nice to kind of go back and see the place again in that way,
Okay. Well, Tony, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
You're never a stranger. This has been awesome. Thank you for coming on the podcast and just giving us a little bit of your time just to talk.
Okay. It's been fabulous. Thank you very much.
All right, Tony, you have a good one.
Okay. Take care. Bye.